Hi, welcome to the 10th episode of Unity Game Development for Complete Beginner series. In the previous episode, we learned how to make a cube in Unity. In this episode, we will learn about colliders in Unity. If we want to detect collision inside our game, then we will use colliders. Collider components define the shape of an object for the purposes of physical collisions. A collider which is invisible need not to be exact same shape as that of object's mesh, and in fact, a rough approximation is often more efficient and indistinguishable in gameplay. In 3D, we have the box collider, sphere collider, mesh collider, capsule collider, and so on. In 2D, we can use the box collider 2D, polygon collider 2D, circle collider 2D, and a few more. Any number of these can be added to a single object to create compound colliders. Let's first have a look at these 2D colliders. Colliders for 2D game objects all have names ending with 2D. A collider that does not have 2D in the name is intended for use on a 3D object. You can't mix both 3D and 2D colliders or 2D game objects and 3D colliders. Circle collider 2D. To add a circle collider to your 2D game object, select your 2D game object and inside the inspector, click on Add Component, type Circle Collider 2D and select the Circle Collider 2D. You can edit your collider by pressing this Edit button and then drag these to adjust its size. The following 2D objects have all of the remaining 2D colliders that we are going to see now. You can add them to a component the same way we added the Circle Collider to our game object. Box collider is for the square and rectangular collision areas. Polygon collider 2D is for free-form collision areas. Edge collider 2D is used for free-form collision areas and areas which aren't completely enclosed, such as rounded convex corners. Capsule collider 2D is for circular and long edge shaped collision areas. If you want to merge the box collider 2D and polygon collider 2Ds, we add a composite collider to our game object. Let's move on to 3D colliders now. In order to add a 3D collider to a game object, we can just add it from the inspector, same as we did it for the 2D colliders, but this time select the name without 2D with it. If you right-click in the hierarchy and go to the third objects and select the 3D object from here, you will see that all of the objects are having some kind of collider already attached to them and you don't have to add them manually. But if you bring a 3D object from outside, it will not have a collider on it and you will have to add it manually. Now you can see we have a few 3D objects in front of us and all of them are having a different kind of colliders according to their shape. First, I have this sword that has a mesh collider in it, and mesh colliders are a particular type of collider which uses an actual mesh for collision detection. If you want to see how, let's check this convex box in the inspector. You can see how this mesh collider works. Here I have another sword and if I add a mesh collider to it, its mesh collider will be according to its shape. Next, we have a box collider. Box colliders are rectangular cuboids and are useful for cube objects and items such as grids and chests. However, you can use a thin box as a floor, wall, or ramp. To edit the box shape, press the Edit Collider button in the inspector. To exit the collider edit mode, press Edit Collider button again. A vertex appears in the center of each face of the box collider in edit mode. To move the vertices, drag them when the mouse is over the vertex to make the box collider bigger and smaller. Next, we have a sphere collider. The sphere collider is a basic sphere-shaped collision primitive. The collider can be sized via the radius property but cannot be scaled along the three axes independently. That is, you cannot flatten the sphere into an ellipse, as well as the obvious use of spherical objects like tennis balls, etc. The sphere also works well for objects that need to roll and tumble. The capsule collider is made of two half spheres joined together by a cylinder. It is same shaped as the capsule primitive. You can adjust the capsule collider's radius and height independently of each other. It is used in the character controller and works for pores or can be combined with other colliders for unusual shapes. Here inside the collider component, first we have material. Here we can drag and drop a physics material. The physics material is used to adjust friction and bouncing effects of colliding objects. But you will not need a material every time you are using a collider, so you can leave this one empty and your collider will still work fine. Other than that, we have a property named isTrigger. If this property is enabled, this collider is used for triggering events and is ignored by physics engine. What do I mean by that is that if we enable isTrigger property, then our 3D object having collider will detect collisions with our 3D objects, but it will not interfere with the physics of the other 3D objects. You will understand it later on when we will work on physics and collisions. So these are some of the basic colliders in Unity that are used very often while working on a game object. And that is enough for you to learn about colliders on a beginner level. I haven't dived deeper into the details of the colliders and some other colliders because that will confuse you at this stage. That was all for this episode. In the next episode, we will learn about Canvas and its elements in Unity.